Hey guys, thank you for tuning into this episode. This episode is a lot about me and my life. Gabe kind of takes a step back to ask questions, and I go into things that I've been through, things that my family has been through, and to some it might be a little triggering, it might be a little alarming. We talk about some heavy things today, and I just wanted to tell you that viewer discretion is advised. If it's too much for you, pause it, and you don't. There's no pressure to watch, but we truly hope that you enjoy.
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is the Crockpot Promises podcast. My name is Gabe, and this is Eli right here. Past two episodes, you guys have been showing a lot of love, and you guys have been subscribing, liking, following, and I just want to say, on behalf of both of us, we're very appreciative. Eli, you've gotten a lot of good feedback and reviews too in the process. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks to finally like put it out there and to have you guys respond to it. And Eli, what are we going to be talking about today?
So first, happy Father's Day
Mm.
to all the loving fathers out there, the ones that are doing a good job and that chose to carry, I guess, the burden of fatherhood. Uh, Today we're gonna be diving deep into my testimony, and it kind of it makes sense to do it at this time to call it pops, because a lot of my testimony does have to do with my dad and the things that we went through and have grown from and learned from. But yeah, so today is testimony time.
Yeah, yeah. With the way that the podcast is going, one, we did an introduction, what we're starting, and then episode 2 was what are we doing, why are we doing it,
Yeah, the meaning behind Crockpot Promises.
the meaning behind everything.
Why we chose that, and examples of Crockpot Promises to what our own have been. And so now we're gonna dive deeper into like who we are as people, to kind of build that connection. That way, you guys know who it is that you're listening to, why you should even listen to us in the first place, and to build that connection with each other.
Yeah, and I think it gives a lot more context to if you're listening because you know Eli but not me, or if you're listening to the podcast because of me but not knowing Eli, it gives great background to why people are the way that they act and the way that they talk because of what they've experienced in the past. So understanding where Eli comes from and where I come from, it gives a good context to kind of understand like, oh, like I understand why Eli is saying it this way.
Yeah.
Or like I know you and I know I know you in the way that like dark humor is like kind of both of our ways of like being funny and being kind of humorous.
Yeah.
But for those that aren't watching, because like if you don't know us, maybe it's a little uncomfortable, maybe it's a little dark, but there's certain reasons why we act the way that we act.
Can I add a side note to things? So I laugh at some things that I really shouldn't laugh at.
Me too.
I put jokes in where I probably shouldn't put jokes, but I do. And part of it is one, I get really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have to laugh. But also the second part and the most important part is that laughing puts everything into perspective for me, and it makes me realize that although I might think that it's this big, huge thing, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm able to laugh at it, it's small, and I see that God is bigger, and that God is above whatever it is that I'm laughing about, which for me is a lot of the things that I've gone through with my dad, and things that I've gone through with both parents, and throughout my life. Now I'm able to laugh at them because it puts it into perspective of like, God is bigger,
Mm-hmm.
and in the end, when I make it to heaven, all that's going to matter is me and God. These things that I went through, like, I don't think they'll matter as much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's part of why I laugh.
Yeah.
But yeah, so praise God.
Yeah. This episode will be the good, bad, and the ugly for sure. And so I kind of just want to dive into it now, so we can get it going, so we're not wasting your time.
Yeah.
So we'll start off like this, Eli. I'll be the interviewer. When were you born?
April 21st, 2003. I'm currently 21 years old. And yeah.
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 And were you born here in Bakersfield?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I was born and raised here in Bakersfield. I've been here my whole life. I never moved away for college or anything like that. I've just,
Just
yeah,
always
I've been
stayed
here the whole time.
Yeah, yeah. And how was like your family like? Because you have three siblings.
Yeah.
Three siblings. Mom, dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my family, like, I'm gonna get into this whole story.
Get into the whole story.
Okay. I grew up pretty nice, in all honesty. I would say like middle class. You know, we lived in very nice places, and when we were together, it was beautiful, and we had that front of a picture perfect family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one, we were big. There's 6 of us. You know, 4 kids, 2 parents, and we go to church, wear matching outfits.
Yeah.
You know, all that type of stuff took like, you know, the family.
The family pictures.
Yeah, family pictures.
Yeah.
And then as things went on, I started to see that some of it like was a front, not all of it, because when I look back at my childhood, there was a lot of good and a lot of bad. There was both, and the bad doesn't necessarily outweigh the good,
Mm-hmm.
and the good doesn't necessarily outweigh the bad, but they're both just coexistent together.
Yeah.
So, when I was in 3rd grade, my family, they were starting to, I guess we were going through some things at that time, because we had just experienced like a robbery, an in-home burglary at the time. It was pretty scary, honestly. My mom and my little sister were in the house, and then on top of that, my mom's best friend was in the hospital with cancer. So my mom would go and stay the night with her.
Yeah.
And so it was a rough time, and in this rough time, we had found out that my dad was sexually abusing my oldest sister.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the day very specifically, because I knew that my mom and my sister were in my mom's bedroom, and I ran over there to go ask a question. I don't remember what I was going to ask, and the door was shut, and I think it was locked, and I could hear them talking. I couldn't hear what, but just by the tone of their voices, I knew it was serious. And I kind of give credit to the Holy Spirit, because when I ran back away to probably whatever I was playing with, I just remember telling myself in my head, we're going to have to leave Dad. And so then my mom called us into the room, and she told us exactly that, word for word. Hey, we're going to have to leave Dad.
Mm-hmm.
So we went and packed some bags real quick and went to my uncle's house, and then that kind of started that was the first time that they had separated. After that happened during the summer, and it was really hard, and I tried my best not to cry, because I think that's when I started this attitude of, if I don't show any emotion, then that means that I'm strong,
Mm-hmm.
and I could be strong for my family. And I'm the middle child, so it goes my oldest sister, my brother, me, and then my little sister. And my brother's kind of the first boy, so he gets older sibling treatment sometimes, like oldest sibling treatment sometimes, because, you know, he's the first boy. He carries on the name,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. So I've always felt like the middle child, and I don't know where the pressure came from at first, to be strong. So I remember in that moment not crying, my brother and my little sister were kind of freaking out when my mom had told us, but I wasn't because I already told myself, hey, this is probably what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I had already, I guess, begun to process it the best out of eight-year-old.
What made you think that out of the door being locked and
I don't know, honestly. That's why I give credit to the Holy Spirit, because that type of thing has happened multiple times in my life where I didn't know what the conversation was. I didn't exactly know or have any context to any situation. I just had a feeling this is going to happen. Kind of like a discernment, I guess. So I do give credit to the Holy Spirit for that. But back to the story.
mm-hmm.
Um, we I didn't cry until that night when I thought everybody was asleep.
Mm-hmm.
Because at my uncle's house, we all slept in the same bedroom. I think my mom was on the bed, and me, my brother, and my sister were on the floor. And then I just was trying hard not to like sniffle, because I didn't want
Yeah.
them to hear me. But I sniffled one time, and then I'm just getting bombarded with like hugs. Like they're like, "It's okay." I was like, "I thought you guys
I
were
thought you guys
sleeping."
were sleeping.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then we're all just crying there together because like we don't know what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And so then we did like visits with my dad at that time.
How long were you not living with your dad from that point?
Throughout the summer
Okay. And where were you guys staying?
at my uncle's house.
Uncle's house.
Yeah, so throughout the summer we do visits. That's actually how I found a deep love for Dewar's ice cream, because that's where my dad would take us.
Mm.
And although like I knew what he did, I didn't understand it. And I honestly didn't understand it until high school, and I didn't understand it even more until after high school. So like I had revelations, I guess you could
Yeah.
call it, of the severity of it. To me, I was just a boy that wanted my dad.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so before the summer ended, we ended up going back and living all together again. And we were together for another 4 years. So throughout those 4 years, the sexual abuse kind of got pushed under the rug.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't talk about it anymore. We didn't bring it up anymore. We didn't just, it was just never addressed. It was kind
Yeah.
of just like, oh yeah, it's over and done with. And it was almost like a sin to bring it up, is what it felt like. At least it was like really touchy.
Yeah.
You know?
So you guys had moved forward, or
Yeah, we moved back in with him.
yeah?
Yeah. And so it was kind of difficult.
So when that happened and you guys moved back in, did you guys just move forward?
Kind of. So as the kids, we pushed it under the rug. We never talked about it. We never addressed it, because like, how do you ask your dad questions about that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, hey dad, what did you do to Justice? You know, like there was never a way to bring it up. And we were also taught growing up, I don't know if I mentioned this in early episodes, but we were taught that pushing things under the rug is solving it. And if you just don't talk about it, then it's not an issue. You know, we were never
That's crazy.
Yeah, we were never taught to address it, to talk about it, to come to some like conclusion or resolution.
Yeah.
It was just, don't talk about it. We don't have a problem. So we never apologized to each other. When I was mad at my siblings, how we would say we're sorry and move on is just be like, here's a remote. You want to pick something to watch?
Boom.
Or I made food. There's some extra for you if you want.
Some?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was never, I'm sorry. It was unless like I think our parents would force us to sometimes.
Yeah.
But like on our own initiative, we just followed that example of like not addressing it, not talking about it.
Yeah.
And so I carried that on for a really long time into my adulthood. But yeah, so with my dad, we never we never talked about it. And so then those 4 years that we're living all together again were filled with a lot of good memories. Like we'd go camping, we'd go to the beach, and I still love the beach. I still love camping so much because these are things that my dad had shown me. It was actually my dad that started that introduced me to God, that would teach us, alongside with my mom, of course. But obviously, the father is the head of the household, so we followed his example. Um, and yeah, so then in eighth grade, when they split up again, they sat us down, and they told us we're gonna split up, but our goal is to get back together. Mom just needs some time to heal because she hasn't fully healed from what happened when my dad was abusing justice. And so then, because we had already had this conversation before, I was fine. I went to bed that night and I prayed, but I didn't cry because I was like, no, it'll be okay. We split up before and got back together, and we've had happy memories since then. It won't be that bad. It's okay. And last time we didn't even split up for that long, you know. And so that was what my hope was in as an eighth grader. This is also right around the time that I met Caben. And he, sorry, I'm saying a lot. Dang it. Caben and I started our walks together with God at that time. So the next day, after they had told us that they were splitting up, on my walk home from school, I had called one of my sister's friends because, like, recently he had just told me, hey, if you ever need anything, you could call. I was like, okay. And so then I did that.
And then you did.
Yeah, and I asked for prayer, which I never done that before. And actually that whole walk home was like a wrestle because, like, it's like, do I ask for help? Am I strong if I ask for help? Or is that weak? You know? I have to be vulnerable and tell him, like, what's going on. Like, this is my sister's friend. He's in high school, you know?
Yeah.
And I guess I let God win that battle, and I called him, asked for prayer, and then he prayed, of course, and he said, hey, I think you should start coming to church. Come to the junior high ministry. I was like, okay. And that is how I started my walk with God, which, let me backtrack a little bit. My family, we did grow up in church. We were raised in church my whole life. My parents had been going to that church long before I was even born. So, I already had ideas of God. I already had some God stories. But when that happened, now it was on my own initiative that I started going to church.
That you had to go yourself.
Yeah. So I think previously I had said that, like, in eighth grade I started taking myself. I had been going as a kid. It was just, now it was my choice, and even if my family didn't go, I would still go.
Yeah.
You know, and that happened often. So that's how I started my walk with God, and then I just boldly kept pursuing it in the midst of these struggles, and that they told us they were going to split up around August of 2016. So then, fast forward the same school year of April 2017, I remember I was about to leave for school that morning, and I see my dad's wedding ring on the by the entrance of the house, the door. And I go and I pick it up, and I'm like, why is this here? Because he doesn't live there. He lives with my grandparents. So then I called him, and I was like, hey, Dad, I found your wedding ring. What's going on? And he said, your mom and I are getting a divorce. She's starting to see other people or someone else. And that was the first time throughout the separation from August to April that I ever heard the word divorce.
Mm-hmm.
Because my hope was always they're gonna get
Getting
back.
back together.
Yeah, she just needs some time to heal.
So this was like thrown off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and I specifically remember the time frame because at school I had to do like the state testing, and I had already finished mine. So I had to just sit there in my thoughts. And it was, oh my gosh, bro, it was so hard. I was in English class, uh sitting there for 40 minutes, and if I let my mind dwell on it, I started to get
Like heart palpitations.
yeah, and bro, it would just beat so fast, and I was just like, if I knew if I were to say one word, I just start crying. So I was like, bro, I can't cry at school because I'm not a crier, you know. Um, and that came from the belief that I had to be strong, can't show emotion, can't talk about things, you know. So then eventually I was like, bro, I can't take this no more. So I go to the office and I'm like barely holding myself together. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, hey, can you call my dad? I don't feel good. And so then he came and picked me up. And I remember when he came in, as soon as we walked out and the door closed, I just let it all out
Yeah.
because I couldn't hold it in anymore. And I was like, he's like, what's wrong? I was like, you said that you were getting a divorce. I thought we were gonna get back together. I didn't think that my family would be separated
Mm-hmm.
because we were so close. I said before, we did all these fun things together, and age-wise, we're all close in age as well. Um, my sister is only 5 years older than me. My brother is only 1 year older than me, and my little sister is only 3 years younger. So we're all very close in age. So I think the distance between my youngest and my oldest sibling is like 8 years, which isn't a lot, like at all. Um, and so the thought of us being separated was just a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I have a question.
Go for it.
What made you call your dad, even though he?
He was the abuser, or
And well, that and also what made you call him to pick you up? Because to me, I'm thinking, for me personally, I'm
Yeah.
thinking the last person I'd want to call would be the one that's causing all of this.
so in my mind, um, this is I didn't know that I was being manipulated, but I was by my dad. So until I moved out when I was 18, my dad was my comforter, and I was told to believe that the separation and the divorce was my mom's fault. It was my mom that gave up. It was my mom that wanted a divorce. It was my mom that started seeing other people. Um, so I started to grow closer to my dad and build up a lot of resentment towards my mom,
Yeah.
which I talked about in the last
episode.
And that's where it stemmed from. So I called my dad because that's my dad. Like he's my comforter, and I still hadn't fully processed
Yep.
that all of this came from what he had done to my sister. In my mind, that's an old problem.
Mm-hmm.
And what my mom is doing
So it was
is
buried
a
under the
new
rug.
problem.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they were completely different. They were not associated or tied together at all. They were each different, you know? So in my mind, I believe that everything was my mom's fault and my sister's fault. Because you know, my sister needed time to heal as well. And I had thought that she was good because we you know, we do things together. My dad would still, you know, talk to my sister, and like she lived with us, and I thought we were like a normal family still, you know. I didn't know what my mom and my sister had been carrying for those 4 years that we were back together.
Back together in the house.
Yeah. And so then, like, to share a little bit of my mom's perspective, that I didn't know until adulthood, and I wish I would have known. Um, when I was younger, is that every night she would, or not every night, but a lot of nights she would have nightmares. My sister would have nightmares, um, and my mom would wake up like in the middle of the night, and my dad wouldn't be in the bed because like he'd be in the bathroom, using the toilet. Uh, and my mom would freak out and just be like, "Where the f are you?" And just start yelling and like having like panic attacks. Pretty
Yeah.
much is what it sounds like when she told me, because she that trust is broken, is betrayed, and I had no idea because in my mind we pushed it under the rug. This problem's done and dealt with.
Yeah.
You know, um, that's why I called my dad, is because he was the one that told me. I In that time that I was sitting in my classroom with my thoughts, I was already building up bitterness, and I was like, if I catch that dude in my house, like I was thinking, I was like, which pocket knife should I grab or something, and just it was just really dark.
Yeah.
And so I was already starting to, I guess, kind of be against my mom. And in this time, I saw my dad, like, going to church even more. I saw my dad. He bought us a Toby Mac album, and
Toby Mac,
yeah,
bro.
and we would just listen to all these Christian songs on the rides to school. He would read. We would all read Proverbs every single morning, every single morning on the ride from our house to school. This was just our
Wow.
routine, and so he was telling us, like, pursue God, pray, and pray that God helps us, pray that God does this and does that. Meanwhile, my mom is not doing that at all, at least not in front of us, and neither is my sister at their house, because we'd go back and forth between my grandparents, my dad's parents' house, and then my mom's house. And at my dad's house, it was so like hopeful and bright and loving and comforting and godly. And then at my mom's house, it was like depressing. It was so depressing because they were just. I know what they were doing now, but at the time, like as a kid, like you're not gonna understand why this one's dark and this one's light.
Yeah.
You're just like, bro, I want to be in the light one. You know. So
Yeah.
I gravitated more towards that, not knowing that my mom and my sister were finally letting all these things out that they had been trapping for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
But all I saw was like the depression and the emotional roller coasters of everything, and I knew my mom was like, she would make mentions of suicide. She would just say how she wasn't happy anymore, that nothing made her happy, and she just she just wasn't happy, and my sister wasn't either. And I have so much understanding now that they were truly, truly broken, and I'm not mad at them at all for it now. But at the time I was, because I was like, why are you guys just sitting here like throwing pity parties for yourself? Meanwhile, dad's like actually trying, going to church and doing Bible studies, reading the Bible with us, buying us worship albums and stuff like that, and you guys
Yep.
are just sitting here. And that's what I thought as a kid, and now I have, like, I guess, wisdom, to and understanding to be like, oh, this is what they were going through. I had heard so many more stories of woman after woman after woman, and a couple of men that I know too, being sexually abused, and my eyes just opened to how common it is. And then I was like, what the flip? Like, this has happened to multiple people.
Yeah.
Um, and then I started gaining understanding, and then I started being like, oh, this is why my sister did this. This is why my mom did this. Oh, and then I started looking at my dad's behavior, and I was like, he was wrong. He never addressed anything, and then towards the towards like the more recent years, he stopped admitting to it too. And he'd just say, I didn't do it. We went to family counseling about a year ago, and he would say, you need to stop saying that I did that. You don't understand the situation. And then he would go as far as to blame my mom. He would go as far as to blame my sister, which heated me. He would blame Adam and Eve. He would blame the person that abused him. He would blame his dad. He would blame just everything and everyone except him,
Mm-hmm.
and took no responsibility for his actions, which is why now we don't really have a relationship. And I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but
I think, like you explaining that, you had said earlier that what you experienced, you had manipulation. You were being manipulated.
Yeah.
And there was a different picture that was being painted, and you were seeing something different than what reality actually was.
Yeah.
And you understood what your mom and your sister were going through. And it took a while for you to understand that.
A long time. This took years. Years. I could talk a little bit more about that. So I already said they split up when I was in 8th grade. So all of high school, it was rough, and honestly, some of the stuff I honestly blacked out in my mind. I forget that even happened until it's like brought up, or until I remember one thing, then it kind of like trickles onto multiple things, like, oh, like a whole chain of events. So in high school, that's when more of the court battles started happening. And this is when even more anger and resentment came in. This is why in the last episode, when I said I hated being around my mom, and I hated like being told that she loved me, is because of all the things that were happening at that time. And it was my dad would tell me one thing that my mom was saying in court, saying that she was lying, that she was just trying to, he called it playing the woman card, because in his opinion, courts lean more towards the women in every case than the men.
Than the man.
Which might be true, but in this case, it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, I didn't think that.
Right.
I was being told again, my mom is the reason for the divorce. My mom started seeing other people. My mom is the one who initiated the court thing. And then we always told my mom, hey, we want things to be 50-50. And if you try to fight for full custody, then we're going to go with our dad. And now that I think about it, he was the one that told us to say that. And yeah, like, bro,
really?
Everything was so, like, there was no event that I came up to the conclusion with on my own. My dad always told me what to think.
It was shaping you.
Yeah, my dad always told me what to think, what to feel, what to believe based on any little event that had to do with my mom or my sister. So I was told that my mom started fighting for like 75% or full custody, one of those. And so that made me hate my mom even more, just kept fueling to the fire.
Yeah.
And then I think I just found out that actually it was my dad that started to fight for more than 50, which I didn't find that out till like, I think this month or last month. And I was like, what the heck? This whole time I'm thinking that you're just trying to cause division. I'm thinking that my mom is trying to take us away from my dad, and that she doesn't want us to be around him anymore. And she's trying to ruin the relationship between me and my dad, which made me lean even more into my dad and push away even more into my mom.
Yeah.
Because this is what I'm being told.
Yeah.
And there did come a point where I was just having such a hard time at my mom's house. My brother had just been kicked out. And I will also say this, like, my mom and my sister weren't right the whole time, because they, like I said, they were in a dark, depressive state. They did a lot of things that, to me, being a new believer, was like like, oh my gosh. I think like my sister started drinking at that time. I don't know if she was using any drugs. I don't think she was, but I do know there was just always alcohol somewhere in the house, and they never do it in front of us. But I was just like, why is this here? And if it's here, who's using it?
Who's using it?
Yeah, so we would go 1 week on, 1 week off. So on our weeks off, when we weren't at their house, I would imagine that's when these things were taking place. I don't know if my mom did it. I'm pretty sure that my sister confessed to doing that, because she had it the worst out of everybody. She's a kid thrown in the middle of a parent divorce. So there was a second time where my mom, I don't even know what the issue was, but we were moving into a new house, and we just kept arguing, and we already had bitterness built up, but we also don't address things. So when one little thing comes up, then everything comes out.
Yeah.
And so then I think me, my mom, and my brother just blew up on each other, and me and my brother ran away that night. My brother took all of his stuff. I just took a change of clothes and my school backpack, because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna just let her chill out for the weekend, and then I'm gonna come back.
Yeah.
And so then we did that, and I had intentions of going back.
Where'd you go?
To my dad's house. Yeah, this is when I said I ran through a field.
Yeah.
That's this time. He actually, funny thing is, he when he flipped a U-turn to like go the other way before we had gotten in the car, he ran over my toe. and it didn't hurt, it didn't break, and that just fueled my thing, like, yeah, I am strong,
Oh, gosh.
I'm freaking Superman. I was like, because I've heard of kids getting their foot run over and it's shattered and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, homeboy ran over my big toe and I was fine.
That's one big toe.
Yeah, praise God.
So was this the same instance where you sat them down and said, I'm moving out?
No.
Okay, different instance?
So when I sat them down and said I was moving out, I was a freshman. And this time that I'm talking about, where me and my brother ran away together, I was going into my sophomore year. Yeah, and so my dad had picked us up, and I was like, okay. I didn't really want to ask, like, when can I go back to my mom's house? I was just kind of just waiting for it to be her week again, and so the day came, and I was kind of like ready to go over, but also not saying anything, like waiting for my mom to initiate it, like, hey, you ready to get picked up or something like that.
Yeah.
And then my dad told me that my mom gave away all my stuff. And so I was like, oh shoot. And I was really hurt by that, because I was like, does that mean that she doesn't want me anymore? Was
it true?
No. But that, it's a little cloudy, because I'm pretty sure my mom did say that she gave away my stuff, but then she found it later. And because she did do some petty stuff, or, I don't want to say petty as if, she wasn't mad at something serious, because she had every right to be mad. We were all in the wrong, but there were, she did find it later, but after, my dad had already bought me brand new school clothes.
Okay, I remember you telling me about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
so there's resentment built up and bitterness built up from that part too.
So that night, I remember, this is also why I clung to my dad so much, because there were I think about 3 or 4 times I would pray and I would beg God. I was like, God, just come down for a second and give me a hug. That's all I want.
Mm-hmm.
Just a split second. That'd be okay. I won't look at you
Yeah.
because Moses and all that stuff. I'll close my eyes. I could use a hug.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every single time I would pray that, I'd go to my room, and then my dad would come in, and he'd give me a big hug, and he'd hold me, and he would comfort me. And so I was really close with my dad, thinking that he had my best interest in mind,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that, you know, a father lays down his life for his kids, right? I do think that he loves us. I just don't think that he loves us more than he loves himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And every move that he would make was more, if it came to protecting us or protecting him, I think he would choose him, But in those moments, I didn't think that. I just thought that my dad was trying to comfort me, but then he would say stuff like, I'm sorry that your mom doesn't love you. I'm sorry that your mom doesn't want you. And then in my mind, it's like, oh crap, my mom doesn't want me.
Yeah.
My mom doesn't love me. My mom is mad, or she's abandoning me.
Mm-hmm.
So then I started to develop abandonment issues.
Which made you, in hindsight, cling closer to your dad.
Yes, and it made me lean even closer into my dad, because now he's the only parent that I have.
Right.
Which is why in the last episode, I think Caben and his mom, because this is around the time his mom took me in and was like treating me the way that I wanted my mom to treat me. She'd always give me snacks, like that was the thing. Go over to Caben's house and get snacks.
Mm-hmm. So comforting.
Yeah. and so it just built this disconnect. And so then after that, I didn't go back with my mom. And I started living with my dad full time. That's when the supervised visits started happening. And it was just now me and my mom were just completely disconnected. I started saying that I didn't have a mom, that I didn't know my mom, just because I was so bitter and trying my best to let go of that attachment to her.
Yeah.
And that led all the way up until I think my senior year of high school. I don't know what had changed. I think I just started praying to forgive her, and I started forgiving her. And so then for Mother's Day, I actually put an effort to do something for her,
Mm-hmm.
which I had never done before. I planned this whole family bike ride, and we all did it together, or we all being my mom's side of the family. And it was really beautiful, and I was like, oh dang, this is cool. And now we're starting to have these moments that are better, and they're not as painful to be around.
Yeah.
It's not hard to be around her. And then I started slowly rebuilding, and being able to talk to her, and then being able to text her, being able to call her and be like, hey, you want to hang out? Hey, you want to go out to lunch? Or she would call me, I think, and ask, and instead of saying no, I'm busy, I'd say yeah, that's okay. And that's how I started rebuilding my relationship with my mom. And then my senior year of high school was when me and my dad started to bump heads even more, because by this time I have read not the whole Bible, but a fat chunk of it. I'd already read the New Testament over and over and over and over. Continued reading Proverbs almost every day. Genesis and Exodus are ones that I just kept repeating to. So my knowledge of the Word and what it said was growing, and my relationship with God was always going deeper. And part of why I kept leaning into God and my dad, but I'm going to talk about God, is because I was being lied to so much. I was being manipulated, and I just wanted the truth, and I just wanted freedom and joy and peace. and all the things that God said He could give. I wanted these things, um, because what God said that He could offer was so like beautiful, and if I give my life to Him, like, oh dang, like oh, this is better. This is nicer. He's gentle and loving. God wouldn't abandon me.
Yeah.
And it says that in the Word that He'll never leave us or forsake us. It's like, oh, I want that, you know.
Yeah.
And I started learning what my identity was, because at this point in time, because I had abandonment issues, I think I struggled with identity issues too. And I thought that everything that I was depended on what I was involved in, what my titles were. And at this time, I was a student volunteer in a high school. We had something called the VIP ministry, which, boosted my ego. And then Caben and I were the presidents of Bible Club
at your school.
And I was the president of a club, and I'm supposed to be leading kids that are my age, and so I held on to that title. And I was also volunteering with kids at this time. This is when I started volunteering with kids, which then leads me to where I am now. And so I was a what's it called? A volunteer, a youth leader. That's the word.
Youth leader.
Yeah, I was a youth leader, so I held on to that title. I was a boyfriend, so I held on to that title. I just let my identity wrap in these things. And then COVID happened. COVID happened my junior year, March of my junior year, and I lost all of that.
Yeah, everything
Church
gets stripped
shut
at
down,
that point.
school shut down, so I'm not president of no Bible club because we're not meeting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to church because church is shut down. And so everything that I thought I was, my girlfriend broke up with me.
That happens.
Yeah, in April of 2020. And so that I lost that too. Sorry.
So fairly quickly, everything that you put your identity in was just getting stripped away from you.
Yeah, this is all happened within 2 months.
Yeah.
So then I was like, dang, boy, I can't do nothing. So then I started riding bikes. And then I started taking people on bike rides. And then I adopted the identity of I'm a bike rider.
Yeah.
Actually, I think I went on a ride with 3 people in this room,
Yeah, he forced me to buy a bike.
Yeah, praise God. I convinced a lot of people to buy some bike.
It was
right,
your
Caleb?
bike I bought.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I made it.
And he gypped me for it.
I did not. It was a good bike.
It was a
You
good
need to
bike.
check.
I'm just messing with you.
But yeah, I tried to
Being
convince
manipulated.
Jesse to buy a $1,500 bike. He almost got a job and did it too. But yeah, so
Dang.
then my identity is in this whole bike ministry thing that I was trying to start. Then my bike gets stolen, and I was like, God, what the flip? I'm nothing, because what I thought I was is gone. My bike is gone. I'm nothing. And keep in mind, like, I'm a high schooler. Like, I'm not a dad. I'm not. I don't have a job.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a high schooler, so my identity could only be in the things that I had.
Yeah.
And so then I started praying. I was like, God, like, who am I? What am I? What's my purpose? What's my calling? What am I supposed to do? Because none of this is working. None of this is, all my stuff is gone.
Yeah.
And that's when he told me your identity is something about you that can never change or be taken away.
Right.
And I've held on to that ever since. And the things that can't change about me is the fact that God loves me, that He died for me, that I was made in His image, that I'm adopted as a son to the kingdom. I'm a citizen of heaven. These things can never change or be taken away.
Mm-hmm.
Ever. It doesn't matter what happens. I will always be God's child. I will always be loved by Him. Jesus Christ died. That is a fact. That can never change. So then I adopted that. And since then, I've held on to that. And now I have the beginning of my foundation.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then things started changing. then I started finding out like what my purpose was, what I was called to, and it had a lot to do with kids, and everything just from there, everything just started shifting, and bringing it back to the point that I was trying to make with my senior year, having friction with my dad, because I had already been building this foundation and growing a lot closer to God, and my identity wasn't in these things that I thought that they were in, but my identity was in Christ and in Christ only. I didn't the way that I started to see my dad was changing.
Right. You were starting to find out truth through something that is truthful.
Yes.
Instead of finding truth in something that is actually a lie.
Yes.
So you start discovering something, you start seeing things differently. Hence the reason why you guys started to butt heads, because you were no longer going with the grain of what you were being shown, and you started going against the grain.
Yeah, I started leaning more towards what was actually true.
Yeah.
Versus what I was told was true. And it was honestly a really good time, like learning that and having that freedom, because now no matter what I had, no matter what job, no matter what title, whether I was the lowest of lows or something up top, I was always good. Because God is my foundation. God is my identity is found in Christ. I'm God's child, and I'll always be God's child. So therefore, I'll always be secure, and I won't have these insecurities like, what if I lose this? What if I don't have this? What if I mess it up? What if I, none of that matters, because I'll always be God's child. So my dad's behavior started changing. My senior year, he started getting more short-tempered, more angry, more aggressive, more just out of pocket. And me and my brother, we would be at the apartment, and we would wake up and he just wasn't there. And then we call him like, "Hey, where are you?" He's like, "Oh, I'm in San Diego." We're like, "What the flip? Dad, we don't have toilet paper." like we have no, we don't have anything. We don't have no food to eat. Like, what was your plan for that? And he just started disappearing. And then find out, we're like, who are you with? Because he'd go on multiple trips. It's like, "Oh, I'm with this girl." We're like, what the heck? Like, you can't be going out of town overnight with a girl, because to Christians that's wrong, because it not that it's not wrong to stay overnight with the girl. It's wrong to not have boundaries that would keep you from stumbling. And stumbling in this sense is, any sexual intimacy before marriage.
Yeah. Well, hence the reason why it's not good for you to stay alone overnight with a girl, because you're putting yourself in a position
where you could be compromised.
Right.
And so
I just wanted to. I was speaking for you because I know.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to sound like self-righteous or like a Pharisee or nothing. But as Christians, and this is something that my dad had taught us. This is one of the principles that he had taught us to be safe, to when it comes to women, and like, don't be alone with women, and all this type of thing. Especially like, we can't stay overnight, but we're also in high school. I don't know how we'd even stay the night with a girl anyways, besides the point. And then he comes back home, and then she starts staying the night at our house. We're like, what the heck? Like, Dad, this is wrong. And then 2 weeks later, she moves in, and we're like, what? Like, Dad, this is wrong. This is not your wife. She can't move in. And then one time, while this girl was showering, my dad comes into the room. He's like, "You guys need to stop saying things like that. You're making her feel like she's not welcomed." And we're like, she's not. And it's not that.
You're like, I don't get what you're trying to say.
Yeah. it's not that she was anything wrong or that we didn't want my dad to be in a relationship or we didn't want him to be happy. We want you to be happy, but we want you to do it
The right way.
the right way. And her living here is not an example of holiness, because the Bible says don't let the marriage bed be defiled, right? So if you got this woman in your bed who's not your wife, like, what are you doing?
Mhm.
You know, it's wrong. And so then my brother was like, he's like, you raised us and you taught us these things, and now you're not following what you taught us to believe. And then my brother said, if you're not a Christian anymore, just say that. And my dad was like, fine, I'm not. And in my mind, that's like the worst thing that you could do, like deny Christ, you know. And so my eyes got all big, and I was like, God, he didn't mean that. Like he like Father, please
Wow.
forgive him. He doesn't know what he's
Yeah,
saying.
yeah.
He's just caught up in his own way right now. He's just tripping. He's not actually he doesn't actually mean that, you know. My dad is a Christian, but I'm also thinking, like, shoot, is he not a Christian anymore? What if he's not? What do I do? I can't stay here because I can't.
Really?
Yes, because I never wanted to be in a place that would lead me from God. And that's why I left my mom's house in the first place, because my dad, although he was the catalyst in the issues, he was still pushing me towards God. Although, he might have been trying to manipulate me with some things, because he would try to use the Bible to make me do what he wanted to do. It still pushed me towards God. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, my mom wasn't. She was just down and depressed and sad and hurt and broken and letting all these emotions out. There was no push towards God. She'd let me go to church, but she didn't take me.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And she didn't. I think around that time she stopped going herself, or she just didn't go when we went, or something like that. We were never at church together, so I just didn't know. And my dad would tell me, like, oh yeah, she stopped. She's not following God anymore. And so then all these things were building up, and then me and my dad were having issues, because when I prayed about going to college, I truly felt like God said, don't go to college. So then I was like, okay. I thought I was going to go to Bible school. I thought I was going to go to like a seminary school or something. And I think I'd tell, Jesse, didn't I tell you that? Yeah, that, like, all my friends knew that was the plan. Like,
Yeah, you told me.
yeah, I'm going to be a pastor.
You told me your
I'm gonna go to pastor
classes
school
that you were going to take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I even enrolled for
You enrolled for a class, or like a semester.
Yeah, just to see what it was like.
Yeah.
And it was cool, but I just didn't feel peace with it, and I felt like I was getting ahead of God, which I've caught myself doing that so many times.
Yeah.
To where now it's like, okay, no, when I get ahead of God, then I'm not relying on Him anymore. And I hate that. I want to rely on God. I want God to be a part of the things that I'm a part of. So I prayed that, God, if you don't want me to go to college, I can accept that. You just have to help me with my dad, because he's not going to be happy. And he was not happy.
Mm-hmm.
He would start yelling at me and all this stuff. And I try to convince him, like, Dad, I'm like, this is what I feel God's telling me to do. I have to do this. And he's like, no, you're going to do what I say. You're in my house. God put you in my house, so therefore whatever I say is what God says. And I just like, no, that's not true. And I would rather, this is what I told him that finally got him to back off a little bit, was I would rather do what I feel like God is calling me to do, be wrong, apologize for it, and then go back to school, than to go to school and spend years in a place that I know God has never called me to be. And he's like, fine. I see how stubborn you are with this and how you're really sticking to it. At least you have somewhat of a plan. I'll let you do your thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, oh, sweet. But then he just flipped a switch out of nowhere, and I had gone on this 2-week trip to a worship school, and when I had come back, I hadn't seen him for like 3 weeks, because the first week of the month I was with my mom,
And then 2 week
and
Bible
then
school.
2 weeks out, 2 weeks I was at the worship school. And sorry, I forgot to mention, by this time, because of rebuilding my relationship with my mom, I decided after praying and after hearing words from God to move back. But instead of moving back with her fully, which I knew I was supposed to do, I went 50-50 because I just couldn't bring myself to leave my dad after all that he's done for me, you know? So back to where I was, and this is July of 2021, I believe. Right, yeah. So I graduated June 2021. The next month, get back from this worship school, and he's just immediately tripping and just mad at. I don't even know what he's mad at. So I would help my mom with some of her real estate stuff, and I had to do that thing because I was gone for 2 weeks, and I wasn't able to get to it while I was there. I had to do that, but I was at my dad's house. So my dad asked me, "Hey, I need you to cut the vegetables for dinner." I'm sorry, but I can't. Um, I have this thing that mom really wants me to do. As soon as I said mom, flips the switch. He's like, "Does everything need to be an argument with you?" And he just starts yelling. And I was like, "Dude, I'm sorry, but if I don't do this, then my mom can't move somebody into this house, and these people need a house, So I really need to get this done."
Okay.
And he was just so mad at me, and then I got mad. I didn't act out in anger or yell back. I just went upstairs and was working on my stuff, and then because I was so upset, I went outside, called my friend, we prayed together, and then once we finished praying, I was like, "You know what? I'm going to I'm going to apologize." We don't do that. We don't apologize. We just stop. We just don't talk about it. We don't confront. It's like, you know what? I'm gonna apologize because I just went to this worship school. I'm holy now, and I'm gonna do things different. Like, I ain't no way I'm gonna go and be in such a different environment and come back the same. So I was like, I walked back in and I said, "Dad, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to make you mad. I just have these responsibilities." He's like, I don't accept your apology. Your apology is BS. I was like, "All right, sorry you feel that way." And I went back upstairs and I finished my stuff. And then the next day, should have been a Tuesday. And I know it was Tuesday because my dad had specifically asked that Tuesdays were me and him time, for just us to do a devotional together and just talk. And we go, and the whole time I'm terrified. And I'm like, "God, please just let it be peaceful. Let us have joy. And let it just be a good time and a good conversation. But please, please, please just let there be joy because I'm tired of how things have been." And so then we go get our Dutch Bros, and we go to the Bluffs, and we park in his truck. And we're sitting in his truck, and we pull out the devotional, and it's about joy. I was like, let's freaking go.
Yeah.
God's on my side, and God got me, and this is good, and I'm gonna see God work right now. We do the devotional, and I don't remember much of what happened. I don't remember it being bad, but because of what happened after the devotional, I kind of just forgot that part because it wasn't as scarring. So my dad just opens up the conversation with, "You want to know why I didn't accept your apology?" And I was like, "Yeah, you could tell me."
Sure.
He's like, "Cause it was BS, and you weren't mad at being dishonorable or disrespectful. You didn't apologize for being dishonorable or disobedient. That's the word, disobedient, which that was always his thing, is disobedience. You just apologized for how I felt. That's a fake apology." And I was like, "Okay." And then he just starts rambling on, and I think I might have said that I disagree, and I still had to stick with my responsibilities of the things that I needed to take care of, because like this was something that I was getting paid for. Like, it was kind of like a job, but it was just like, as it comes, I do it, and it's a remote job. And he just starts yelling at me, cussing at me, he says that I'm a fake believer. My beliefs are fake. My religion's fake. I'm a Pharisee. I'm this. I'm that. I'm a B. I'm just a failure. I'm never gonna go anywhere in life. I'm never gonna do anything. F you, F this, F that, and just like he's like yelling at me, and like there's spit coming out everywhere, and and it's like landing on me, and it's like, bro, that's disgusting. And he's
Sounds like a
and
good conversation.
yeah. Well, conversation goes both ways, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
So then, um, he's like, and don't think that you don't owe me rent for July. And I was like, huh? I
Did
wasn't
you ever
even,
pay him rent?
yeah,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't have a job, so I was like, how do you expect me to pay you? He thought that I was making bank with what I was doing with my mom, but it wasn't that much. It was like $40 for everything that I did. And so then I was like, bro, like I wasn't even here for July. Like why would I pay you for July? And so then he just like flips out, snatches my phone, and he snatches it, and then I snatch it back. I'm like, that's mine. And then he grabs and when I had snatched it back, because I had pulled and he was pulling, he spilt his coffee on himself and the door. And so then he like slams his hand, grabs a screwdriver. He's like, "Do you want me to stab you in your effing eye?" And I was like, "Bro, here. It's not that serious. Like you don't gotta kill me for this."
I'm
And
trying not to laugh.
and so then he yeah, it's okay. You could. This is one of the things that I laugh about. And I'll show you like how much he's tried to manipulate me from that instance. But yeah, so then he takes the phone back, and he's just continuing with the ramble. But in this moment, as soon as he took the phone, I had this random, or it wasn't random, I had this wave of peace come over me. And I couldn't hear my dad anymore. It was just me and God. And God had reminded me of a prayer that I prayed earlier that year. And that was after I had already moved back in with my mom's to my mom, with my mom, sorry. God, if you want me to leave my dad, I don't think I have the strength to do it. I need you to force me out. The last thing that I depend on him for is my phone. If you want me to leave, take my phone. Make him take my phone. And I had completely forgotten about that prayer. But in that moment, I was reminded all this peace, and I was like, okay, today's the day. I'm moving out because I'm one, this is a sign that I asked from God. Two, I'm no longer safe here. You know what I'm saying? So then he, he's continuing on with his thing, and I'm just not paying attention, and so then I'm just sitting there praying like, all right, God, how do I do this? What am I gonna do? How do I pack my stuff? How do I leave? I'm asking myself all these questions
Yeah.
while still being yelled at and spat on. It just wasn't
But
like relevant.
mentally, you
I'm
just
checked out because of
pack your bags in your mind, and you're like, I'm leaving.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so then I go back to the house and I clean everything because I was like, in my mind, I'm gonna show him honor by cleaning the house, or the apartment for him before I leave. And I didn't even do like just my chores. I did not all the chores. It wasn't spotless. He hoards a lot of stuff, so I didn't touch none of that.
Okay.
But I did some things. Like I did the dishes and um I don't remember, but I cleaned a little bit extra. Okay, that's not even important. I just cleaned a little bit extra. Called my older sister Justice because she had a truck, and I was like, "Hey, can you come pick me up?" And she said, yeah. So my dad when he dropped me off at the apartment, he had left to go to his appointments or whatever he had to do, and Justice came, and the whole time while I'm taking my stuff from the apartment to the truck, I'm just begging God, like, God, please don't let him come back while I'm still packing, please, please, please. And then sure enough, on my last things, homeboy pulls up,
No.
and my heart drops, and I had just like put something in the truck, like half my body is in the truck putting it in, and I see his car pass, And I was like, crap. And I looked at Justice. I was like, Jay, what do I do? And she's like looking in the back seat like, I don't know, Eli. And I was like, God, please help me. So then I was like, you know what? No, I'm changing. I'm not gonna do the same crap and just run away. I'm not gonna not address it. So I was like, no, I'm gonna do things different. So then I walk up to his truck. He rolls down the window. He's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, I already had plans to go and be with mom today, but I'm letting you know I'm moving out because God is leading me in a direction, and I feel like what you're telling me to do goes against where God's leading me, and I will not go against what I feel my Lord is telling me to do. On top of that, I have responsibilities, things that I need to take care of, and you're refusing to let me take care of them. So I can't, that's not something that I can sacrifice. Most of the problems that we're having, I think are happening because I live here. If I didn't live here, I don't think we'd be having these problems. Thinking that my issues were just, he's mad at me because I don't clean, you know? Which I did clean, so he was just tripping. And so then he's like, this is BS, that's BS, your reason's BS, and he's just mad. I was like, okay, I'm still leaving, and I am like so calm. How I'm saying it now is how I said it in the moment, and I do that a lot. Like however it was said in the moment is how, like, I guess, like, go into character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So then I go back in and I get my bike toolbox and I get my bike bag, and as I'm walking out, he storms into the garage, and he has like crazy eyes, and he's like fist balled up, and he's just like going like this, like I don't know what homeboy's contemplating, but he's contemplating something, and I'm just kind of frozen, and he's like, give me your effing key. I was like, okay. So like my hands are a little shaky, but I'm taking the key off. I hand it to him, and then out of nowhere he just grabs my bag, and I take his hand off. I was like, hey, this is mine. I'm taking it, and then I just walk out, and he just leaves me alone, and that's how I left my dad's house. And then I didn't really talk to him after that. That happened in July, I think I said, and then I don't think I talked to him until February. So this is July 2021, February 2022. And at this time, again, my faith is increasing even more. My walk with God is increasing even more. I had graduated high school, so COVID everything was coming back, church was back, and I because I had graduated high school, I'm no longer volunteering there or student volunteer. So now I was with the kids ministry even more, falling more and more in love with it. Got moved from one campus to another campus to be more involved there, and it was great. And so I didn't really think or pray about my dad really, but then in February I started getting like convictions, like, hey, I need to forgive him. I need to start working on things. So what I did was I took him out to lunch and I apologized again, for anything that I did to make him upset, for, how things went, and I was apologizing, and I tried my best to not expect him to apologize.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still kind of hoping that if me opening up my wrongs did, I hope that it would open up his as well. That way we
Yeah.
can like grow and be like, all right, hey, yeah, I forgive you, you forgive me. But that's not how the conversation went. All he did was say how I was wrong, kept saying what I did wrong, kept saying that I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And I was like, okay, I'm sorry for that too. I'm sorry for that too. I'm sorry for that too. And that was it. and I was honestly kind of disappointed. And then I think later on that same year, so that's February now, go to August of that year, and this is 2022.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry. Before we go to August, so from February to May, May was a very important point in my life, May of 2022, because this is when I made my vow to God. And my vow was to stop saying yes to the things that I wanted to do and to start saying no to them, but to only say yes to the things that I know for sure God has called me to do. And one of those things was a relationship. There was this girl that I liked at the time, and I kept praying, God, can I date her? Is this my wife? All those types of questions. And God had told me already that year that I don't do New Year's resolutions. What I do is I ask God to tell me what the focus is for that year.
Mm-hmm.
And that year, he said that I was going to be a children's pastor. So it had progressed, because in 8th grade is when he told me I was going to be a pastor. That year, 2022, January 2022, told me I was going to be a children's pastor. So I was like, oh, dang. And I think I've said it before, but I'm going to repeat myself. What I thought
A pastor was.
Yeah, thank you. What I thought a pastor was then is not what I thought a pastor meant now. I thought, I'm in kids ministry. God just said I'm going to be a children's pastor. The church is finally going to hire me. I'm going to have a job and all this stuff. And it just, that's just where my head was at. So then bring on this girl. I'm asking out like, hey, can I date her? And God's like, no, this is not what I said we were going to focus on this year.
Oof.
Yeah. And I was like, oh. Is she gonna be my wife though? Like, like I know I can't date her right now, but like maybe later,
Yeah.
And God was, and I never really got like a clear answer. All of the verse that kept coming up, or similar verses, was keep your mind on things above, not on things of this earth. And the one that I have on my ring, which is Galatians 2:20. And it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me.
Mm-hmm.
So this life which I now live, and that's where I forget it. But the main part is, it's no longer I who live. When you surrender your life to Christ, it's not your life anymore. Your life now belongs to God. And people might be like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. But if you think about it, if God has our best interests in mind, if he loves us more than anything,
right,
and he has unlimited knowledge and wisdom, he's a creator of everything, he is so smarter and wiser than anything that we could ever understand, then whose hands do I want my life to be in? Mine, who has at this time 18-year-old knowledge, versus an unlimited God? I think I'm gonna go with God.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like the better option. So these are the responses that I kept getting, and then in May I had to cut off that relationship because I was still trying to hold on to it, even though I knew God was telling me no. And I was like, fine, I'm going to make this vow to you to not only to say yes to everything that you have for me, to say no to the things that I want, to be completely single, and I went extreme. I've always been like extreme or hardcore or radical, because for me, it was the radical change that helped me stay changed. It was the radical measures that helped me to not go back to where I was at before.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do a radical change, if I just did a small change, then it was really easy to go back. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like cold turkey. I shaved my head.
Yeah, it was very intense.
It was very intense, and I'm not sharing this because I think everyone needs to shave their heads.
Yeah, I'm not doing that.
What I do think should be analyzed and prayed about and questioned is my heart behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I hope people take from this, is the heart behind things, of like, hey, surrender to God. That's what it is at its core. Surrender to God. Fully surrender to God. Jesus said, pick up your cross daily. And something, I could pull it up real quick. It's Mark 10, 43 through 45. Whoever wishes to be great among you shall be your servant, and whoever wishes to be first among you shall be the slave of all. For even the Son of Man, which is Jesus, did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. If my life is supposed to look like Christ, then I have to arm myself. Every mentality that Christ had, I have to try to arm myself with the same mentality. That's actually what's on the back of my shirt. I had these ones made. It says it was for you. There's going to be an episode later on. But on the back it says, Christ died for you. I also arm myself with the same purpose, that you would know that you are loved, seen, heard, and safe. It's this idea of I am the servant. I'm not trying to be served. I'm not trying to serve others. I'm trying to be the one that is. Wait, sorry. What did I just say? I'm trying to be the one that is serving others.
Mm-hmm. You're trying to put yourself at a lowly place.
Yeah, a lowly place, and this was very good for me because I had struggled with pride so much, and so then talking about these things and arming myself with these mentalities helped me to not have so much pride, and now I've been able to be a lot more humble, a lot more have just a lot more humility, which then helps me have more gentleness, helps me have more understanding, because I'm not up here thinking that I'm something. Instead, it's like no, like I'm a servant. What do you need? How can I serve you? How can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, shaved my head, and I started this crazy walk with God, and this is when everything started coming out with my dad.
Yeah.
Everything.
And that was one of the purposes of the vow, right? Was to kind of unravel everything internally.
Yes, but I didn't really know that that's where it was going.
Yeah.
And so I call that year, because I made the vow was for 1 year. I ended up carrying it on for 2 years. Grew out my hair for 2 years. Maybe we could add a picture of I look like Jesus, bro. It was crazy.
Yeah, now you look like a little boy.
Yeah, and so I call those 2 years therapy with God, and I didn't do anything for those 2 years. I actually I wasn't a volunteer. I wasn't anything. The only thing that I did was I had my job working at a school.
Mm-hmm.
I actually was told to step down from kids ministry. I honestly don't know why, though, because there were never any situations with any kids, never anything like that. It was just, hey, I think you should sit out for this Sunday. I was like, okay. Come back the next Sunday ready to go, and they're like, I think you should sit out for this one too.
One more week.
Yeah, I was like, okay. And then like, I think you should sit out for a while. Like, what the heck just happened?
Gotcha.
And I'm thinking, God just told me I was going to be a children's pastor. They just told me not to be in the children's ministry. So what am I going to do? God, and I almost went into this identity crisis again, of like, God, who am I? What am I? Like, what's going on? And what God had told me was that it was never about preaching to 20 kids on a Sunday morning, because whether I'm there or not, they're going to hear the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to know. But it was about being in front of 1,000 kids every day at school, because they're not always being presented the gospel. They're not always being presented love. They're not always safe, seen, heard, or felt like they have value. So that's where God sent me.
Yeah.
And what God had told me was that I'm sending you to a place where what you're going to do is what a pastor does, but they're never going to call you that because you get caught up on titles so much, So I'm working at these schools, shepherding kids, and just being a positive example. I'm like level with them, because I'm a yard aide. Like, my title ain't nothing crazy. It's not like I'm not a principal, I'm not a teacher, and they let me know that too. I ain't gotta listen to you, whatever it was. But I was a yard aide. I'm right here with them, and I've been able to learn and to grow and to see so much and change so much about how I see things. Like, one of the biggest things that God taught me from working with kids is that
All right, so all three cameras died at the same exact time.
They did.
So we have switched over to our backup of a camera.
Yeah.
And so the last thing that we finished or starting to talk about was adults are just kids that got bigger. So
Yeah.
what do you mean by that?
Because of what I went through with my dad and with my mom and with my sister, I had all that resentment. I had all that bitterness. I had all that anger, that hate, that frustration, that just, um, you know. So when I see a kid, I can't be mad at a kid
Mm-hmm.
because I know that they're small, they're learning, and it's so easy to have grace for a kid. Adults are literally just kids that got bigger. When I think that when we see an adult act childish is because there's still a child in them
Mm-hmm.
that was never dealt with fully. So we're seeing that side of them come out.
It flares up.
Yeah, and it flares up, and so that's why, like, bro, why are you acting like this? It's you know, it's just a because it was never dealt with.
Yep.
And there's a story of this kid. His name is, well, I'm not gonna say his name, but he was getting in fights, and he had just gotten into 2 fights, and
At the school that you worked at?
yeah, at the school that I work at, and he's in 1st grade. He's a little boy.
Throwing hands
Oh,
as
yeah.
a first grader
Oh, yeah.
is crazy.
Yeah, thugging for real.
Dang.
And
Well, that's
and
a lot of built up anger.
Yes, and so then I was like something like, I think I give credit to the Holy Spirit, saying like, hey, you need to press in a little bit more with him. It's not just put him on timeout and leave him alone. It's no, we need to get to the root of this one. And so then I asked, I was like, hey, what are you mad at? And sorry, this one gets me choked up sometimes. I was like, what are you mad at? He's like, this kid pushed me and he's not sharing the ball, and and I was like, no. What are you really
What
mad
are you
at?
mad at?
And then he starts crying. He's like, I just miss my dad. And it's like, okay. That opened my eyes to see that if there's a kid just acting out because there's something else going on, how many other people are doing that?
Mm-hmm.
How many other kids are doing that? Then therefore, if adults are just kids that got bigger, how many adults are doing that?
Yeah.
How many of us are just acting out the things that we've been trapping in for so long? And if that's the case, if everybody's struggling, if everybody's hurting, why don't we have more grace for each other?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we more gentle with each other? Because that little boy, after that moment, I gave him a big old hug, and we talked about it a little bit more, and but after that moment, I was like, I will never be mad at a kid ever again. I will never judge them for what they're doing, because chances are that there's more to this than what I know.
Yeah.
And so then once I knew that, I was able to start having those types of conversations with kids. And after that moment, bro, this little boy was happy all the time. He still got in trouble, but he didn't fight nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he'd see me, he'd be like, Mr. Eli. And now we have that good relationship with each other. And he moved away, unfortunately.
Dang.
Yeah, I miss him a lot. But that moment changed a lot for me, because now I just have endless grace, especially for kids. But now it's way easier for me to have grace for adults. So then going back, when I see my dad, I could talk about these things and not get angry, because what I see is a little boy. And at my grandma's house, there's pictures of my dad as a little boy. Like, as soon as you walk in, it's my dad and his brothers. And I see my dad's face, and he's so happy. His eyes are filled with just this wonder and this joy, and it's like that's my dad.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a little boy. He's just broken, and that doesn't excuse anything that he's done. What he did was wrong, and he needs to own it and admit to it. But I can still have forgiveness and grace for him because he was just a little boy who was also abused too, who didn't have the best father figure, who didn't have the best people around them. Like I, luckily, even though my dad was very wrong in a lot of the things he did, he still pushed me to God. You know?
Yeah.
I don't think he had that.
Mm.
You know? And so it's like, okay, I'm not mad at you. I see my mom. I'm not mad at my mom. I see my sister. I'm not mad at my sister. And then anytime something comes up, it's like I don't get, I don't stay angry. I should say I don't stay angry, because initially I will admit there's like that desire to want to be angry, and to want to be frustrated and to act out in anger.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like no, that's God's little boy. That's God's little girl. I'm not going to be mad at you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm sure, like, wrapping everything from your life and in your story, that's probably one of the biggest things that you've learned throughout this whole process is adults are just kids that got bigger.
Yeah.
And it helps me look at things at a different light too, because, like, you take that not only in perspective with your family, but you take that into perspective with your friends, your coworkers. For me, I work with the customers, so like I see it with customers.
Yeah.
You take that into every aspect of your life.
Yeah,
There's
with
so much more
every
grace.
single person. And what that also helped with is all these pastors and people of high reputation that I idolized now get off their pedestal. They're not idolized. Like, no, that's a little boy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little girl. Now I can see them because, I used to copy people, or not copy, but like mimic behavior, because I wanted to be like them. I thought that they were cool. I thought that they were godly, and I just wanted my life to go in that direction. And so every little thing I thought that they did was right, and anything outside of that was wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after that, it's like, oh no, that's just a little boy. They're doing great, but that's just a little boy. That's just a little girl.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes so much pressure off of them. It takes so much. It takes my focus from them back to God again.
Yeah.
And all these things that I've learned just always lead me right back to my Lord.
Right.
And
it takes off, in my opinion, it takes off pressure off me, and like the expectation onto other people. Because if I'm putting my faith and my trust and my hope and my confidence in people, I'll always leave myself disappointed.
Exactly.
But if I go through the lens of this is not how they're acting because of, like, on purpose.
Yeah.
This is them getting triggered by something someone said when they were 8, and that's sparking back up again.
Mm-hmm.
So you start to think of like, okay, I can't knock them for it as much because they're just acting out the way that they were when they were little as well, because of what they've experienced.
Because they think that they're in that same environment again.
And it's crazy because I'm sure we'll get into it in like further episodes and everything else, but it kind of shows how much stuff society puts under the rug. And how, like, a lot of things that we lash out on, or like things that we've dealt with, never actually gets dealt with.
Yeah.
And we try to address it by just saying, like, here's the remote, you want to pick a show?
Yeah.
Rather than addressing it to with the person, or addressing it with ourselves, and kind of grieving and processing it that way.
And there's no resolution if you don't talk about it. There's no growing. There's no moving forward. You think that you're moving on, but you're not. You're actually just staying still.
Yeah, you're just staying still
and stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And then you do that with one thing, and then you do that with two, and then it just all piles on.
Yeah.
And that's why so many people blow up. Is because you can only bottle in so much before you let all of it out.
Right.
And it just have grace.
Yeah.
and I know it's easier said than done, of course, but if you have grace, if you hold on to these things, if you start to see people like children but respect them all like adults, then I truly think that the environments that we're around will be better. And I hope that when people are around me, you know, they're able to open up, they're able to talk about things. And that's something that I do a lot with people in my conversations. We open up, we talk about things. Like I've barely met people, and then we just start
You start going
talking.
into
Like,
these deep
yes, dude, there's
conversations.
one of my coworkers. This is literally, I walked into his classroom to meet him. We both cried.
Really?
Yes, this first conversation that we had, just because it's just like,
Wow.
when God gives you wisdom and understanding, when he gives you compassion, when he gives you love, and then you go and walk in that, then you create a safe place for people. And that's all I've ever that's all I want now, because I wasn't safe, and even more so, my sister wasn't safe. It hurts me to know that she spent years of abuse, not without confessing, without talking about it. I didn't mention this earlier because this was more about my dad and my immediate family, but my uncle had also been doing 100 times more worse things to my sister at the same time that my dad was. Except my dad did it for, like, the time span was, like, I think a few months. My uncle was 10 years. So the time my sister was from 4 to 14 years old, all the worst things imaginable were being done to her. And then right around the time my sister confessed to my dad is when my uncle had stopped as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so to think that my sister was in an environment like that for so long and didn't say anything, how many other kids are like that? Because I know my own personal story. I thought that I had to be strong, so I never talked about these things until now. How many other kids are living like that? And that thought hurts me, and there's a burden, because I was like, no, the kids that I'm around, that I want them to feel safe. I want them to be able to talk about these things, and that's what we have now. That's what my whole life is, like, built around now, is the love that God showed me, the safety that God gave me, and the freedom that God gave me, along with the truth. I now get to present that same truth, that same love to kids.
Yeah, it's good.
You know?
Yeah.
And then we get to start attacking things at the root. We get to start addressing things now. They don't have to wait till they're 21 years old to start doing it. They don't have to wait till they're, old. I have this belief that like, so everything starts as a seed, then it grows into a tree, right? It's a lot easier to trim a 12-year-old tree than a 21-year-old tree.
Right.
And even more so, like, if you start even younger, if you address it like as soon as you possibly can, it'll be a lot easier, still difficult, but easier than if you waited even longer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so now my life centers around children, and it centers around helping kids, talking to kids, being a safe place for kids, teaching them the things that I learned, teaching them to address it, to talk about it. And that doesn't even necessarily have to be me. Like, and I tell them that, like, you don't have to open up to me, but you got to open up to somebody, and you got to talk to a trusted adult about these things. If it's your parents, praise the Lord. Because in a perfect world, it should be your parents. It should
be your parents.
It should always be your parents. Your parents should be the safe thing.
Yeah.
They should be your comfort. That's your home, And I kind of talked about longevity in the, I forgot if it was the last episode or the first one. If we build these habits now, then what I teach my kid is going to be a lot different than my experience,
Yeah.
Because all the things that I've worked so hard to become, all the ways that I've changed my mind from when everything happened till now, that's just going to be normal for the kid.
Right.
For my kids. That'll be normal for your daughter. That'll be normal for, all the people that I get to have conversations with, all the new mentalities that we adopt, that's those new ones that they worked hard for are going to be passed on to their kids. And that's the goal, is to create a not to create a generation, but to help raise up a generation that is mentally healthy, that is able to talk about these things. Because if you're able to talk about it, you can change. I have this belief that people who have changed, no longer carry shame. And if they still carry shame, it's because they haven't changed. And there's a part of what they did that's still who they are to this day,
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the word like repentance comes in, and why I'm able to talk about all the things that I've done wrong is because I've changed.
Right.
I'm not the same. Why my mom is able to talk about it, why my sister is able to talk about it, is because we've all changed and grown, and that's no longer who we are anymore. But my dad, why he still has shame, why he still can't admit, why he still gets short-tempered anytime you bring anything up, is because I think that there's part of him that still beats himself up for it. He hasn't fully accepted the forgiveness of the Lord for himself. He hasn't repented specifically from the manipulation part, from the lying, from the defending himself, from that side of things. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you guys for listening. I know this was a long one, and you don't. I don't know if you're going to listen to this whole thing or not, but if you did, if you stayed the whole time, thank you so much. I know it was a more serious episode, more in-depth into my life, and thank you, Gabe, for being a good co-host and interviewer, and asking some good questions, and forgive my rambling. Forgive me for how much I say because I know I say it a lot, but it's just because I'm trying to think about what I'm saying and be smart with it.
Yeah.
So is like my loading screen,
It's your it's your buffer.
Yeah, that's my buffer.
Yeah.
Sorry, dang it, I did it again.
It's all right, bro. It's all right.
Yes.
This episode's not just like just shooting the breeze type of episode. It's a lot of reflecting.
Yeah.
There has to be a lot of intentionality with this episode because there are so many parties involved. Nothing wants to get taken out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to the episode, like, we had to really think everything out of how we were to approach this episode because of everything that's involved in it. So we really appreciate you guys like listening. If you did listen all the way through, like,
yeah,
we are very grateful for you. And I had a good time. I've learned a lot about you in this episode that like I didn't even really know in depth before. So I know personally this episode will be fruitful and productive, and it will hopefully resonate with somebody if you're willing to get into the mindset of changing habits and learning, relearning, reframing your mindset, and also just knowing that God really can change anything.
Mm-hmm.
He can change mindsets. He can heal physically and mentally. And
he can
I think
restore relationships.
He can restore even the worst of relationships.
Yeah. And
I think it's beautiful to see, like, as Eli, my friend, and like one of like my very, very close like brothers, it's really cool to see someone younger than me. He's only 3 years younger than me, but it's good to see like there's not a lot of people that put in the work to actually deal with a lot of things that we deal with as humans.
Yeah.
So like seeing you at the age of 21 dealing with things in a positive light and also being willing to share it. It's been good for me to like take a step back on this episode and just kind of ask so that like people can truly understand who you are.
Honestly, that's pretty much it. I think there's a really good place to stop. I appreciate you guys. I love you. And I hope you know that God sees you. He knows you. He loves you. You are safe with him. And I hope that, you could take from my story and apply it to your life and just understand that God is there. And throughout all of this, he was there. It was him that I could lean on. that actually gave me good support. I didn't go to drugs or alcohol, and I'm glad that I didn't, because there's not actually real support. I can't lean on that because it won't push me forward. Walking with God pushed me towards healing, which is the best thing. Instead of just pushing it down more, pushing things under the rug, sweeping things under the rug, actually addressing it and healing, although it got harder before it got better.
Yeah.
I can say that I'm doing better with my healing, and I have that freedom. I have that peace. I have that comfort, and that all came because of the closeness to the Lord. So my encouragement is that you would try your best to pursue the same closeness, because it is only by God that I got to this place. It is only by God that I have the freedom, that I have the healing, that I have the love, the joy, the compassion, the gentleness. Does that make sense?
100%.
But yeah, thank you. We'll see you guys next time.
We love you guys. See ya.